Hello everyone. In this session, we want to take a look at automating Active Directory administration. And in the previous session, we looked at working with Active Directory administration, creating users, creating groups, creating computers, creating organizational units. But we did that with the graphical user interface. This session is about automation. We want to do the very same things, but we want to automate the process. Automation allows fast implementation of bulk operation. It's all good and well to be able to create a user account using the graphical user interface. But what if we had 200 users or 200 computers to create? It would take us all day and all night to do that if we use the graphical user interface. Automation is the key. There are different tools that you can use when you are doing automation with Active Directory. Let's look at some command line tools. DS, Directory Service Command. That is a set of command line tools that we can use to create user objects in Active Directory. We also have the LDIFDE command line tools. We also have the Csvde command line tools. And then we also have our Windows PowerShell commandlet, which we can do to create users and groups and other objects within Active Directory. We're going to start first by looking at the DS commands, Directory Service Commands, that is. And the DS commands, you can see them here. The first one is DS add. That command line tool will create objects in Active Directory. Then you also have DS get, and that command will display properties of the objects that you create. If we were in the graphical user interface, we will simply click on the object, right-click on it, and click on properties, and that will bring up the property box. To do that under the command line tool, we will actually be typing a command beginning with DS get. Then there is DS query. If you want to search for an object in Active Directory, you can use the command line DS query. In the graphical user interface, you will have the graphics search box. Then you will have DS modify, DS mod, and this modifies objects that you create in Active Directory. Then you have DS rm, the command line used to remove Active Directory objects. And then you have DS move, and this directory service command moves Active Directory objects. We want to go and take a look at a practical example of using the DS add command to create objects in Active Directory. We also want to look at the DS modify just to show some examples of command lines using directory service commands. We're going to be using the TechNet Lab to actually do this exercise using DS add. And I want you to pay close attention because for your lab exercise, your hands-on lab exercise, I want you to use the same machine that I'm going to use in this video. So I'm already logged in to TechNet. Here is the address, https://technet.microsoft.com/en /us/virtual labs. Remember, you have to have a Microsoft account to sign in. So I'm already signed in. So I'm going to come down the screen here and I want to choose System Center. So I'm going to expand System Center. I'm going to scroll down the screen a bit. Expand System Center a second time. And I'm going to click on System Center 2012 R2. And we're only going into System Center because we want to use one of the domain controllers. And the domain controller that I want to use is on page 2. So I'm on page 1 here. So I'm going to click the next page arrow that would take me to page 2. And you can see here I'm on page 2 of 3. And this is the lab that I want. Hot System Center 2012 R2 Lab 3. So that's the one that I want you to choose. And I'm going to click on the lab to open it. I'm going to scroll down the page and I'm going to click on Get Started. I'm looking here at the Launch Lab tab. At first it will say Sign In and then it will change to Launch Lab. So I'm going to click on Launch Lab. And you can see that my lab environment is being built and that will take some time. So we're going to pause this video until the lab has been built. Our lab is now ready, and what I need to do is to find the machine that I want to use, and I know that the machine I want to use is the very first machine. I want to press OK on the box that you see on the screen. So if you look at the bottom right, this blue tab here, that's the OK tab. So I'm going to click that. So now I am on my machine because this is the first machine that I want. And by default, when we go on to this lab, it goes on to the first machine that you can see there. Now, what I want to do is to bring up the command line. So I'm going to go and click on the window here. And I'm going to type CMD. And you can see my command prompt here. I want to put the command prompt, pin it to the taskbar so I wouldn't have to come back and look for it. So I have actually pinned the command prompt to the taskbar. You can see the command prompt here at the bottom because we're going to be using the command prompt to run the directory services commands. So now that I have that command prompt on the taskbar, I'm going to click on the command prompt to open the command prompt window. And we have the command prompt window open. And let's make that a little bigger for you so that we can see a little better. Okay, now we are ready to create some users. But the first thing that we need to do is to create an organizational unit. Remember, an organizational unit is a container within Active Directory. And you saw us create organizational unit in the previous session when we use the graphical user interface of Active Directory users on computers. We're going to be creating an OU called MS class. MS class. And if we make an error while creating or while typing the code, you can always backspace and correct that error. So we're going to start with DSAdd. The space, and then we're going to type OU. space OU equal MS class, comma, DC equal whatever your domain is, and our domain for this domain controller is Contorso. The name of the domain is Contorso. So I'm going to type domain controller DC equal Contorso, CONTOSO, comma, and then we want to type DC equal com. Now before we hit the enter key, we want to make sure that we have the right thing. So dsadd is the command line. The syntax is OU. OU equal MS class, where MS class is the name that you're going to give to the new OU. And then comma, DC would be your domain name. And then you have comma, DC equal com. So the Contorso and the com represent your domain. After you've made sure that it's right, you want to press enter to execute the command. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter. And you can see it says dsadd succeeded. Now if you make an error, you can simply press the up arrow. You will get the same command and you could correct that command on the line. Now we are going to create a group using dsadd. So we're at the command prompt and we're going to create the group inside of that OU that we created. So we're going to start again with dsadd space group. And we're going to now type the name of the group, and we're going to call the group class group. So we start with open quotes and CN, common name, equal class group, CLASSGROUP, and the comma, no space. Remember we said that we're going to put it in the OU that we made. So we have to say OU equal the name of the OU, which was MS class. And then we have to type the domain. And the syntax for the domain is always DC equal whatever your domain name is. And our domain name for this DC is Contorso. So we have to go ahead and type Contorso, comma, DC equal com. And we have to close that quotation mark that we did there. So we're going to close the quotation mark. We want to double check it again. We are creating a group inside of the OU that we did. So we have here dsadd group space open quote CN equal class group, comma, OU equal MS class, comma, DC equal Contorso, comma, DC equal com, and we want to press enter to execute that command. And it tells us here that the dsadd succeeded in creating the group. Now, we want to create a single user, and we want to put the user in the user's container. Active Directory has a default users container that we looked at in the previous session, and we're going to create a user and put the user in that container. So we start with dsadd again, user space, And we need to open our quotation marks here because we're going to be typing the information for that user. So we go again, CN, common name, equal, we'll call the user Simon Williams, SIMON Williams, comma, and then we have to put that user inside the user's container. We have an error here in Simon, so I backspace and delete the error. Remember, as you go, you can make corrections on the line. And even if you have completed the line and you get an error, you can press the up arrow, which will give you back that same line and make the corrections there. So CN equals Simon Williams. Then you want to say CN equal users. Because that's the container that Simon is going in. And then you want to type your domain. So remember the syntax of the domain? DC equal contoso, comma, DC equal com, and you want to close those quotation marks. Let's check again and make sure that we have everything right on the line. DS add user, space, CN equals Simon Williams, comma, CN equal user, comma, DC equal contoso, comma, DC equal com, and we close the quote, and we want to press enter to execute the command. And we can see here that that command succeeded. Now, we're going to go into Active Directory. We want to go and look to see if we can see Simon in the user's container. So I want to access Active Directory, and I already have a shortcut for Active Directory here in my taskbar. If I didn't, I could go to Tools, Active Directory, Users and Computers at the top of the screen, but I already have the shortcut here. So I'm going to click on Active Directory, Users and Computers here in the taskbar. And we are looking in the users container. Here users is highlighted, so these are the users over here. I want to scroll down and look for Simon Williams because there's something that I want you to notice for Simon. There is Simon here, Simon Williams. But if you notice, the icon for Simon has a little arrow here, a little black arrow. That means that the user is disabled. So when you create a user using DS add, by default, that user is disabled unless you enable it. So what we want to do now is to go and use the DS modify command to enable that user. So we need to go back to the command prompt. So we're going to close Active Directory, Users and Computers here. And we are going to use the DS modify command to enable that user within Active Directory. So we start with DS modify with DSMOD space, and you reference the user, and the user is the same path that we had put, CN equal Simon Williams. And if you type the name incorrectly, the command will not succeed because Active Directory will not know who you're talking about unless that person exists. So the same path, CN equal users, DC equal your domain, which was Contoso, comma, DC equal com, and you have to close your quotation marks. Then we have some other stuff to do. Space, hyphen. You have to put in a password in order to disable the user. So hyphen PWD, standing for password. And then you put the password that you want the user to have. And I'm going to put PASSWORD01 space hyphen disabled DISABLED no. Now don't make the mistake of saying disable equal no. That won't work. Let's look at the command line again before we execute it. DS modify user space open quotes CN equal Simon Williams, CN equal users, DC equal Contoso, DC equal com, close the quotes, space, hyphen PWD, space, password 01, space, hyphen, disabled no. Pay close attention because you're going to be following these commands when you are doing your lab in the hands-on lab assignment. So we're going to press enter to execute that command. And here we can see that the DS modify succeeded. And if we go back into Active Directory, we're not going to see that arrow by Simon's name. We will see that that account is now enabled. Now, what we want to do with the user that we just created is to add the user to the group that we created. Remember, we created a group called class group. Well, we're going to use DS modify to add the Williams user to the class group account. So we're going to start with DS modify again. And we have to reference the user. But first, we have to get the group that we created. So we're actually going to type the path for that group. So we're going to start with the quotation marks. And we're going to go CN equal class group, comma. And remember that the class group was in the OU-MS class. So we have to type OU-MS class, comma, DC equal Contoso, comma, DC equal com, and we want to close the quotation marks, and let's make sure that's right before we move on. DS modify CN equal class group, which was the group we created, OU equal MS class, and you see we forgot the equal, so you need to be really careful here. So I'm going back and I'm going to type the equal sign. OU equal MS class, DC equal Contoso, DC equal com. Now, we said that we wanted to add this Williams person to that group. So we're going to go, after you type the quotation mark, you want to give a space, and we're going to say add member. And to say add member, we have to type hyphen ADD MBR space. I'm going to add the member Williams. So open quotes again, we type in the path where the Williams user lives. So we go CN equal Simon Williams, comma, CN equal users, comma, DC equal Contoso, comma, DC equal com. And we want to close those quotations. Be careful of the quotations. Once you open a quotation, you always have to close it. All right, we already looked over the first part, so let's look over the second part. The second part was add member. So that's hyphen ADDMBR space and the member. Simon Williams, CN equal Simon Williams, CN equal users, DC equal Contoso, DC equal com. And now that we have that, we want to press enter to execute the command. And if there's an error in the command, it's going to give you a list of all the directory services commands that we had on screen before: ds add, ds get, ds modify, ds move. And to get help with the syntax of any of those, you say ds add. All right, let's scroll back up the screen. Right back up to the top to the last command that we did. So it says this ds modify command modifies existing objects in the Active Directory. You can see all the commands that we did and where they succeeded. And the last one we did was ds modify. And let's go over that again to make sure that we have the right thing. We have for the ds modify, and we need a group in there because we're actually putting the person in the group. Are you looking here? ds modify, and there's no group after ds modify. We need to get the group. Remember I said that if we press the up arrow, we're going to get the last command. So let's try pressing the up arrow. There you go. So I'm going to take my cursor right back and go after ds modify space. I'm going to type group, G-R-O-U-P. So now we have the group inserted in there. So again, what we were doing is adding the user that we created to the class group. So we must begin with ds modify. In the command that we did before, we did not put group. We needed to put group. So you'll see me go back there, press the up arrow, get the command line, and enter group. I'm going to move my cursor to the end of the line, and I am going to execute again. And we double checking. There's modify group, CN equal class group, or you equal ms class, DC equal Contoso, DC equal com, add mbr, add member, and the member we're adding is Simon Williams, CN equal users, DC equal Contoso, DC equal com, and we want to enter to execute. And we can see now that the command did execute. So when you type a command and the command has an error, you will see all the help commands coming up. See these help commands, they would list all the help commands. To get back that command line again, you press the up arrow and you read your command and you make the necessary changes that you want for your command to succeed. We are now going to use another command, LDIFDE command line, to automate users in Active Directory. You might be wondering what LDIFDE stands for. It stands for Lightweight Data Interchange Format, Data Exchange. The command line allows you to add objects to Active Directory. You can also use it to modify and delete Active Directory objects, and it also supports populating passwords, which Csvde does not. And when we get to Csvde, we're going to see that one of the main differences between Csvde and LDIFDE is that LDIFDE can do a bit more because it can modify and delete objects in addition to adding objects to Active Directory. So what we see here in Notepad are the actual names that we want to add to Active Directory. You first have to populate Notepad with your information. So we have two users here, one called Carl Foster and the other Fabian Ali. So we open a Notepad file and we start with the distinguished name of the user. The distinguished name of the user is the username and the path where that user lives. So you have DN : space and the distinguished name. CN equal Carl Foster, OU equal Department C. We already have OU called Department C in Active Directory. That's where Carl would be going. And then we have DC equal the domain, which is Contoso. Change type, meaning add, we're adding a user. Then you have the common name. Some people call it canonical name, Carl Foster. Then we have the object class, which is user. We have within Active Directory different object classes. For example, you could have a computer object class. And if I were adding a computer for the object class, instead of user, I would put computer. Then some account name is the login name that the user is going to use to log in. Then we have the next user following the same syntax. The distinguished name, change type, the common name, the object class, and the login name. Now we want to save this file, and we want to save the file to the root of the C drive so it'd be easy to locate. And we're going to go File, Save As, and we're on the C drive here, and we're going to call this file trial, go back here, trial.ldf. Be careful when you're saving this file because you don't want the file to be saved as a text document. So where you see Save As type here, you want to click on the down arrow and you want to change it to all files so that you don't have text tagging on at the end of LDF. And that's important because if you have it as a text file, then the import will not work. So we have here the file name trial.ldf and we want to click on Save and save that to the C drive. and then we want to close Notepad. So now we have the command line pump, and what we want to do is to import those two files into Active Directory. And to import those files, we will actually want to navigate to the root C drive. So we say cd ... And to come down to the C again, we need cd ... so that we are at the root where we actually save that trial file. Now we need now to use that ldifde command, so we're actually going to type it on the line. ldifde space -I, the I is for import, space -F, the F is for file, and then we want to type the name of the file, trial.ldf. Check to make sure that we have it right. ldifde space -I for import, space -F for file, space, and the name of the file, and we're running it from the C drive where we saved it. So we want to hit execute or enter to execute the file. And it says 2 entries modified successfully. So you know that you were successful in adding those 2 users. Those 2 users are not going to be enabled. So to enable them, you would have to use the ds modify command to enable those users. We now turn our attention to adding users using the Csvde command line. We want to gather our information in an Excel file. So this is an example of an Excel file here. In the very first row of the file, you type object class. In the second cell here, you type SAM account name. And in the third cell, you type DN. So this is the top row. Then the rows below will hold the information. So this would be row 1. The second here would be row 2. And J. Edwards, the SAM account name, will go under the same column as the heading SAM account name. And then you have the distinguished name, CN equal Janice Edwards, OU equal department. There's no enter here. That goes straight across in your Excel file. And then you have the other names populated in the Excel file. So we have 3 columns here. We have the object class column, the SAM account name, and the distinguished name of the person. Now, Csvde is a really easy way of gathering your information. So it's very popular. If I have 200 users, then I might actually want to put them in an Excel file because I can see them clearly. I can see the columns, I can see the rows, and I can populate that Excel file with the 200 users. And then what I would do is import these users into Active Directory, and then probably use ldif or ds modify then to put the other information, the other attributes for the users, like the passwords and the other different things that you saw us configure when we were using the Active Directory graphical interface tool. Now, if you don't have Excel, you could enter the information into Notepad following this format. In Notepad, you would type object class, comma, SAM account name, comma, DN. And then in the row below, you type user, the user logon name, and then the distinguished name in quotation marks. The second user follows the same syntax. So that's what you would have to put in your Notepad file. And then what you would do is you would save this Notepad file the same way how we saved the LDIF file. Save it to the root drive for easy location, and you make sure that you take off the text, all text, and put all files, and the file would be saved as a CSV file. So it would be whatever name you're going to call it, .csv, and that would be at the root of your drive. And you're going to import it the same way you imported the LDIF, but instead of using LDIF, you're going to use Csvde. So we're going to actually do an example of that right now. We're going to use Notepad to put the CSV information in. Let's say we don't have Excel. So you remember you have the top line with the object class, the SAM account name, distinguished. And then the second row will be the data. You have user, you have the SAM account name, and then you have the distinguished name. So user would be on the object class, J.E. Edwards would be on the SAM account, and the distinguished name you would have under that CN equal Janice Edwards, OU equal department C, DC equal Contoso, DC equal Com. Now imagine that you have 500 users. What you will have to do is to make sure and save the file as a CSV file, and you see I have it saved already, but let's still go through the steps. Say File, Save As. Remember, make sure that you go to all files, you change to all files, and you put in the name .csv, and you click on Save. I already had it, so I will overwrite it and say yes, and it's on the C drive, so I'm going to say yes. You want to now close Notepad, close the drive, and you want to now go to the command line. And you are going to use the Csvde command to import those two files into Active Directory. So let's go. You type Csvde space -I, remember, for import, -F for file, and we call the file info. So it would be info.csv. If you don't remember the name of the file, you could always go and look at it before you press enter to execute. So let's double check again. Csvde if info.csv. And we're going to press enter to execute. And the command has completed successfully, so we know that we were able to use Csvde to enter the files into Active Directory. This is the end of this session. Thank you for listening. Next, we're going to look at using PowerShell to automate Active Directory.